And the question that Peter Strick and colleagues asked was, how is it that movement actually gets the adrenals to release adrenaline? Like, what's the signal? Does it come from the muscles? Does it come from, the skeleton? It's perfectly reasonable to assume that there are signals that come from the muscles and from the skeleton that cause the adrenals to release adrenaline when we exercise. But what Strick and colleagues did was actually super clever. They took some new tools that had just become available. These are tools that allow the tracing of neural circuits from organs in the body all the way back up to the brain, or from one brain structure to another brain structure, and then to yet another brain structure. We don't have time to go into all the technical details, but this is a technique that perhaps I'll talk about on a future podcast. It's one that my laboratory used for a number of years to trace other neural pathways. What they discovered is that there are essentially 3 categories of brain areas, all of which communicate with the adrenals and can cause them to release adrenaline to create this elevation in arousal and attention. Those 3 brain areas include areas of the brain that are involved in thinking, what we call cognition, areas of the brain that are related to what are called affective states, which is just kind of a more general category that includes emotions. Okay, if you saw the Huberman Lab podcast episode that I did with Lisa Feldman Barrett, she explains beautifully the distinction between affective states and emotions. But these are brain areas that basically relate to what we are feeling or how we're perceiving our environment and how we're reacting to it, these sorts of things. And then there's a third category of brain areas that most robustly communicates with the adrenals. And these are a collection of brain areas that are all involved with movement of particular areas of our body. These areas are broadly referred to as the motor network. So these are areas of the so-called cerebral cortex, which are in the outer portion of the brain. And they send these wires down the spinal cord. There's a little relay in the spinal cord called the IML. If you're interested in the anatomical details, I'll put the link to this paper in the show note captions. In any case, these brain areas that are involved in motor movement send axons, those wires, down to the spinal cord. Then from the spinal cord, they send a relay out via what's called the cholinergic preganglionic neurons. Basically, what ends up happening is that acetylcholine, which is a neuromodulator, is released from these neurons that originate in the spinal cord onto the adrenal medulla. And then the adrenal medulla, the so-called adrenals, same thing, adrenal medulla, adrenals, releases adrenaline. That creates these effects in the body on the heart, the muscles, and other tissues. And then, as described before, that adrenaline also acts on the vagus up to the NST, the locus ceruleus, and we have this elevation in alertness. So this paper and papers that came subsequent to it really explain how it is that the movement of our body, aka exercise, allows us to have this elevation in arousal and alertness.